What about comparisons to the Vancouver Olympics, you might ask, Mr. Speaker? Here, let me quote Ward Alcock, coordinator for the 2010 Olympics and G8 security. Mr. Alcock recently told CBC that such comparisons cannot be made since the Olympics were not a security event, but instead were a sporting event for which we provided security. The bottom line, Mr. Speaker, is that the experts agree. Comparing security for the Olympics and G8 and G20 summits is like comparing apples to oranges. The two events are quite dissimilar. He went on to say in another interview that the G8 and G20 summits are, and I quote, major meetings of global governance at the present time and in the context of the economic crisis not unimportant. It means that you are hosting 30-plus leaders of the most powerful countries in the world, many of whom travel with much higher levels of security even within their own countries, and we have an obligation to ensure that when they come to Canada to attend the G8 and G20 that they are secure. To repeat, we have an obligation. That is what our government is committed to achieving, and to achieving in the most open and transparent way possible. I would like to therefore outline for the House exactly where the allocations for security and policing and for the G8 and G20 summits will be spent. Security planning for the G8 and G20 summits, of course, is led by the RCMP through the Integrated Security Unit in consultation with the Department of Foreign Affairs and International Trade. The Supplementary Estimates A allocate $321 million to the RCMP so that they can perform this function in the most comprehensive, efficient, and fiscally prudent way possible. An additional $262.6 million is allocated through Supplementary Estimates A to Public Safety Canada to reimburse provincial and municipal partners for eligible, justifiable, and reasonable incremental security expenses they may incur. Reimbursements to our security partners will be based on audits that will be conducted following the summits, Mr. Speaker. I want to point out that in both cases, these allocations will not be used only to ensure we protect the safety and security of visiting heads of state and their delegations. Indeed, they are being used to protect the safety and security of all Canadians, including those who wish to engage in peaceful protests during those summits. Clearly, our government believes in freedom of expression, Mr. Speaker. We believe that everyone has the right to be heard. That is why the Community Relations Group within the G8, G20 Integrated Security Unit has been proactively reaching out to individuals and groups who may wish to protest in order to ensure their needs are accommodated and also to ensure that we can facilitate peaceful and lawful protests at both summits. At the same time, Mr. Speaker, the Integrated Security Unit has been working to ensure the safety and security of residents around Huntsville and Toronto, as well as businesses and also their properties. We have already seen senseless acts of vandalism connected to the summits, and these are stark reminders that we need to remain vigilant and take action to keep our communities and streets safe for everyone, which is something our government has made a top priority since we were first elected in 2006. Mr. Speaker, among other allocations, the Supplementary Estimates A allocate $63.1 million to the Department of National Defence to provide unique military capabilities that will assist in ensuring the safety and security of the G8 and G20 summits. It allocates $2.2 million to the Canadian Security Intelligence Service to provide intelligence support related to threats to the national security of Canada, including the G8 and the G20 summits. As well, Mr. Speaker, the Supplementary Estimates A allocate $1 million to Canada Border Services Agency to provide activities associated with the provision of incremental border services and critical program support for both the G8 and G20 summits. In particular, the border services will focus on managing the entry of all accredited G8 and G20 participants and ensuring that these individuals are in possession of the required travel documents. Since our government was first elected, Mr. Speaker, one of our top priorities has been to ensure that the necessary resources are always in place for law enforcement officials and our security partners to do their jobs. We've invested prudently and transparently in the RCMP so that they had the manpower, the training, and the equipment necessary to help make our communities safer places to be enjoyed by all Canadians. We've invested prudently and transparently, Mr. Speaker, in the Canadian Armed Forces so that Canada could again play a leadership role overseas in Afghanistan and elsewhere and work with our international partners to help foster peace and security around the world. We've made investments to further improve security at our domestic airports so that Canadians can feel confident about air travel and safely travel should they choose to do so by air. Mr. Speaker, these are just some of the investments our government has made to ensure we protect the safety and security of all Canadians. And we're committed to investing in the same prudent and fiscally responsible way with regard to the G8 and the G20 summits. We're not going to cut corners. According to a recent Leger marketing survey, 50% of Canadians are sure there will be protests and violence at the upcoming summits, but they also think that Canada is well equipped to handle such events and to show the world what good hosts that we are. The reason they believe that, Mr. Speaker, is because of our government's track record, and the government's track record which speaks for itself. We've told Canadians from coast to coast to coast that their safety and security is one of our top priorities, and we've delivered on what we've said that we would do. We told them we would take action to crack down on crime, and Mr. Speaker, we've delivered. We told them that we would take action to combat the threat of terrorism, both at home and abroad, and we've delivered. Most of all, Mr. Speaker, we've told Canadians that we would do all that in an open and transparent way, and once again, Mr. Speaker, we've delivered. We've delivered when it comes to improving the accountability in government. We've delivered when it comes to being open and forthright in outlining security expenditures for the Vancouver 2010 Olympics and Paralympics, as well as the upcoming G8 and G20 summits. With those comments, Mr. Speaker, I therefore cannot support the motion from the Honourable Member for Ajax Pickering, which I believe ignores these facts and, if passed, would have the effect of encouraging the government to ignore our obligations to our international partners, as well as to all Canadians who expect us to show leadership on the world stage. That is not the Canadian way, Mr. Speaker. We will not ignore those obligations and encourage all honourable members to vote against this motion. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.